What's up, everybody? How are we doing? We doing good? Awesome. It's great to see you guys. My name is Ryan. I'm one of the worship leaders here. And if this is your first time here at Kensington, we just want to say welcome. We're so excited that you're here. Our heart behind just creating this space is that we can all encounter God, but it's a safe place to do that. So welcome, and we're going to get started here in a few moments with some singing and that kind of thing. So if you guys want to stand right now, turn to the person next to you, tell them what's up, give them a handshake, a high five, whatever feels comfortable, and then we're going to sing here in a few moments.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick, and I just wanted to say thanks again for watching our service today online and being a part of this community. Now we know that you might have some questions as you watch the service today and want to find out a little bit more information about who we are. And so we've created an environment for you to do just that. Simply go to startingpoint.today. That's startingpoint.today and fill out that short form, and one of our staff members will reach out to you very shortly and answer any questions that you have about our church and about who we are. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll be back at the end of the service today to give you a little bit more information, but we'll see you here in just a few minutes.
I was buried beneath my shame, and who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. In all my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. All right, let's sing this out. Sing You Called. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Oh, out of the darkness to your glorious day. My soul. Who believes that this morning? Sing this again. Now your freedom is all that I know. Sing the old made new. The old made new. Jesus, when I met you, sing you called my name. Shout it, and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day.
All right, with all that we got, let's sing this as our story.
I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan. Now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, and when you call my name, I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. Yeah. You called my name. Yes, I ran presence of my enemies, I'll raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I'll raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I'll raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Come on, let's hear you sing this. I'll raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. I'll raise a hallelujah, and I will watch the darkness flee. I'll raise a hallelujah in the middle of the mystery. I'll raise a hallelujah. Fear you lost your hold on me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. Oh, sing a little louder. And heaven comes to fight for me. Sing a little louder. In the presence of my enemies. Sing a little louder. Louder than the unbelief. Sing a little louder. My weapon is a melody. Oh, sing a little louder. And heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive.
Well, good morning. How are we feeling this morning? You guys feeling pretty good? 9 o'clock crowd came to play. You braved the elements, the weather, the rain weather, which is better than the snow weather. Am I right? Yeah, somebody just said preach. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, no. It'll be here in a week or two. It'll be great. Hey, we're so glad that you're here. Do this for me. Go ahead and turn to 3 or 4 people around you. Give them a high five. Let them know how glad you are they're here. And then you can go ahead and have a seat after that. Welcome to Kensington, everybody. So glad that you're here. My name is Patrick, and I don't think you could have picked a better week to be here. You guys are feeling good. Everybody's feeling pretty good today. Everybody. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I've had a lot of coffee this morning already, if you can't tell, and so it's gonna be a great day. Hey, I got a couple things to put on your radar real quick. I think we're gonna show these up on the side screens if we can, real fast. Let me tell you this: if you're here and you're new to our church, we kind of do several things throughout the week, and we have kind of announcements that we're a part of here. But one thing I always tell people that are new to our church is, if you haven't been to church in a long time, there's kind of this stigma around, if I come to church, they just want my money, and I love that question here. And here, you're really amongst some of the most generous people on the planet. And the reason I say that is there's a group of people who not only give to make Sundays happen, even though that happens, but there's a group of people who give to things that are a lot bigger than that, a lot broader than that, all around the world, and even locally what we do. And so I just want to say to those of you who partner with us, thank you so much for all the ways you partner with us, from volunteering to giving to this place to showing up week in and week out. There's a group of people who got here this morning around 5 a.m. and got here early and made things happen. There's a group of high school students that got here today around 5 a.m. and did all those things. So I just want to say thank you so much for all the ways that you partner with us. So we're going to invite our ushers to move forward. We're going to receive our offering this morning. And we're going to put this up. Can we put this on the side screens? Sorry. There's a few ways that you can give here. You can text the word Kensington to the number 77977, and you can follow all the prompts there. Super short and easy to give that way. You can always give on the Kensington app. Takes less than 10 seconds. Or you can go to kensingtonchurch.org/giving. You can give in that way as well. And then we got a couple other announcements that I want to put on your radar. The other thing that I want to let you know about is we have a retreat coming up just for guys. It's called Man Up. And Man Up is a weekend where we kind of get together, and it's just all guys. We descend upon Spring Hill. Usually there's between 800 and 1,000 men that show up to this, and you do everything from, I think there's like a gun range to there's all sorts of like camp stuff. There's amazing sessions this year. You're going to get to hear from one of my favorite speakers. His name is Steve Carter, and Steve Carter he's written books. He's an amazing guy, but he's going to be there. Steve Andrews, our founding pastor, is going to be there, and so we would love for you to be a part if you haven't signed up yet. So you can go to kensingtonchurch.org/manup. You can sign up there and you get all the details there about what's going on. But we would love for you to be a part of this. It's an amazing weekend. I'm supposed to tell you there's a lot of bacon and a lot of meat. So if you need anything else, I don't even know. Anyway, so you should come to that. It's going to be a great weekend. We'd love for you to join us. The other thing I want to let you know about is we also have a date night coming up soon as well. So we do this a couple times a year, and it's going to be November 2nd. And what we do here is we essentially take over this room. Essentially, we kind of like turn it around, and we talk about helpful content specifically for relationships. If you're dating in a serious relationship, or you're engaged, or you're married, especially, like these date nights are amazing. The content's really geared at helping you to be better at marriage and your relationship. And we also have a whole lot of fun. How many of you have ever been to this, by the way? Anybody ever been? So you've been to this? Yeah. It's so much fun, and it's slightly irreverent, so it's all good things in one big date night thing. So we'd love for you to be a part of it. She's like, yeah, it is. So we'd love for you to be a part of this. It's so much fun. Join us for this. You can sign up in the lobby of the hub, or you can sign up at kensingtonchurch.org. And the other thing I want to let you know about, which is crazy that this is already upon us, but we have Treat Street coming up as well. Treat Street's coming up in October, and we're already in the process of helping kind of get this off the ground. And so what we do every year is we show up at Traverse Heights Elementary School, and we essentially do like a trunk or treat. So you come and you decorate your car, and you kind of theme it out, and you dress up as stuff. I think last year, we were Back to the Future last year. So I was Doc last year, which was amazing. Anyway, so yeah, it was so much fun. And so we asked you to do that. But the bigger thing is a lot of the kids that go to that school are part of our mentor program that we do there. And so it's a great opportunity for us as a church to reach out. So this year, we're looking for 50 cars to show up. And so we need you and your family to be a part of this if you would. So essentially, you buy candy, you decorate your car, and then you dress up. You kind of have a theme around it. So we'd love for you to join us in that. You can go ahead and let us know in the lobby at the hub that you're going to do it. So we can go ahead and start planning for that. We'll be talking about it over the next few weeks, but we would love for you to do that. And then the last announcement I have for you is we have something new that we're starting over the next few weeks, and it's called 3 Questions. And what we have talked to so many of you about is you come on a weekend, and one of my favorite things is people who say, you know what, I come and it's fun and I like it and whatever, but I'm still kind of curious about questions about faith. And so we started this thing called 3 Questions. And essentially it's an environment for you to be able to ask questions, but also we're taking 3 of the biggest questions that we get asked about Jesus, about Christianity, about faith, and we're just unpacking them over a 3-week period. And so it happens in between service. I believe it starts next week, so we would love for you to join us for that. If that's something at all that you're interested in, you can, again, sign up in the hub, at the lobby, and let us know that you're going to be there. And essentially you're literally just going to circle up and talk about one of these questions every week for about 40 minutes with a group of other people that are curious just like you are. So we'd love for you to do that. Now, I got one more thing, and this is kind of a family thing before we jump into the talk and everything we're going to do. And so this is kind of weird. There's a guy in the truck. His name is Regan, and he doesn't know that I'm going to do this. So are you okay if we embarrass somebody this morning? Yeah, we are. Great. He's not. He's freaking out right now. So, Regan, I know you can see me. If you'll come out here real quick, go ahead and come out. Make sure you kick him out of the truck, whoever's back there. So, back here, backstage, just so you know, all this video stuff is run by a group of people. And one of the people that's running this is a high school student. And he is going to be, he's graduated high school, and he's starting college. This is one of the high school students I was telling you about that gets here at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning pretty consistently, and he runs things around here. So, everybody say, hey, Regan. Yeah. So, I wanted to do this. He could also beat me up, which is a little bit scary. But Regan has been serving. How have you been serving with us? You've been here for a long time, huh? Yeah, you grew up here. Yeah, since middle school, since 6th grade. So I'm trying to do that math in my head. 4 years of high school, 8 years. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, so it's amazing. And so, Regan, what we just want to do is we just want to say thank you so much. And I want you, if you see high school students like this serving, this is one of the biggest things because a lot of times high schoolers, how many high schoolers get up at 5 o'clock to do anything, right? Especially this. And so this is an amazing thing. So, Regan, we just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for serving with us for so long. Thank you for making such an impact here. Can we one more time give it up for Regan and all that he's done here? Thanks so much, bro. Thanks for coming out, too. Yeah, great. All right, so today's going to be a great day. I'm super excited about it. We're gonna invite the team to come out. We actually have a song that we're going to kick things off with here in just a second. I know I'm kind of like tweaking a little bit of our order now, but we're going to go ahead and invite them to come out. The song that we're going to do today is a song that's going to set up the message. And today we're talking about something that's not only kind of odd to talk about in church, but it's something that we just don't talk about as a culture very often at all. And so if you've been with us the last couple of weeks, you know that for the last few weeks we've been talking about community. We've been talking about what that looks like to do that in a healthy way. And so today, we're going to be talking specifically about your story. And so if you're here and you're like, you know what, I'm kind of new to church or that sort of thing, this is going to probably feel a little bit less like a church service and more like something that you would hear like, hey, we're going to go really deep into your story. And so to get us thinking about that, this is Brian, this is Maddie, and Ryan. Everybody say hey to these guys. They're pretty great. Let's just do that for your beard for a second. Anyway, let's get quizzical. But anyway, see what I did there? But anyway, so they're going to sing this song for us, and the song that they're going to sing for us is really like a setup to what we're going to be talking about throughout the day. So I'm going to ask you as you kind of listen to this, not only listen to the song and be moved by that, but really listen to these lyrics and what it says. So let's listen to this together.
The sun's always rising, but you'd rather keep hiding from the loss that you'd endured. Is anyone listening? Or are we all walking past each other's open doors? 'Cause you've got a song to sing that nobody else can dream.
Today's a brand new start. To anyone who's ever had a broken heart, you don't have to stay alone.
Cause you got a song to sing that nobody else can dream. And if you don't sing it, then no one else will. 'Cause it's just your song to sing. Oh, oh, oh. the times come for you to recognize who you are and what you'd like to do. And each day presents a choice, whether to hide your dreams or give yourself a voice. 'Cause you got a song to sing that's nobody else's dream. You may not sing loud and you may not feel proud, but what's there to lose? You just got to choose to sing. 'Cause you've got a song to sing.
I love that. And I love that line especially where it says you may not sing loud, right? 'Cause there's a part of us, depending on like your background, your personality type, and kind of the way that you were brought up, that kind of leans into that. Like maybe you're a person, when it comes to your story, there are parts of your story that you wish like you could highlight for everybody, and these are the things that you put on Instagram and Facebook, and we all do that. If you have kids, if you're like me, like, yeah, I think yesterday we were in the park and I was like posting a few pictures of our kids, like doing some fun stuff, and I left out the other 764 versions of it that they weren't smiling and looking at the camera, right? Like, you've kind of done this, and we kind of joked about this a while back, and not that I read mommy blogs often, but every once in a while I jump into that world, and you look at it and you're going like, what, how did you wake up and now you're just so happy at 6 a.m. and haven't slept, and like, not that they're fake, but every once in a while you just go like, is that real? Like, is that really the thing that's kind of going on with you? And, is that what your world really looks like? And we live in a culture, and this is what's interesting, we live in a culture that celebrates it, right? So if you're on Instagram at all, we even have like a name for it now, like a social media influencer. You ever seen this? Which is all great. And, people make money off of doing, I don't know what they do exactly, but they make money doing this, and they post pictures and all these kind of things, which is amazing. And it's not like a bad thing. It's interesting, but you kind of go, like, what is that? And there was a while in our culture, and this is also funny, there's a while in our culture that the version of that was like picture perfect, everything was together person. And now if you look at social media, now there's like a whole kind of move and shift, even amongst many of these influencers, where it's like, no, this is the raw, real, honest, this is what was hard about, all of these kinds of things. And I think that's so interesting. Because I think there's this part of us that kind of pauses and goes, what is it that's really authentic about us as people? And what is it that really connects us as humans? And what is it that goes beyond marketing? And what is it that goes beyond what we kind of sense, where it's like all put together and all this kind of thing? And this is true in my world as well. Like when I speak, I always get like, questions about, is that really? Like, did you guys really? And you want to give like honest, like, yes or no. Like, this story was good, and then this story was bad, and this is where I failed this week, and this is where it was good, all these kinds of things. And so for us today, what I want to do is I kind of want to take a deep dive into that. And I want to take a deep dive into what it looks like and what it means to be authentic, not just with like what we present with people, but with who we are as humans. Because if we get this part right, especially for those of us who are followers of Jesus, there's a certain level of actual influence that comes with going, this is actually who I am. This isn't like the thing that I'm just posting to make seem, like I'm better than, or the conversations that I'm having that elevate me above other people. No, this is the real version of me. And so today we're going to take a deep dive in that. Now, if you're a guy in the room, where are my guys at? Can I just hear a big manly grunt from the fellas? Yeah, you're already checked out of what we're talking about, and I know that, right? As soon as we started talking about, like, the feelings, whatever that is, like, you're done, and I get it. But here's what I want you to do just for a minute, right? The next few minutes, the reason that you checked out when I first started talking about this is exactly why we're talking about what we're talking about, right? The reason that there was a part of you that as soon as I started saying, hey, there's like a real version, maybe not a real version, there's a part of you that just goes, like you distance yourself from that immediately. That's exactly what I want to get after for the next few minutes, especially for those of us who are guys, all of us in the room, but especially for those of us who are guys. And so if you would, even if you're like, there's a moment where you're going like, oh my gosh, this is the last thing that I wanted to wake up in the morning and talk about, or more importantly, listen to you talk about, that's okay. Just for the next few minutes, I'm going to ask you to kind of lean in, and I feel like we're going to get somewhere in our time together. Now, the way that we're going to get there is actually talking about how you were raised, right? Now, how many of you did trick-or-treating as a kid? Anybody do trick-or-treating as a kid? Anybody in the room, we did this at our house for a while, that you didn't do trick-or-treating because your parents didn't think it was a good thing? Anybody else other than me? Yeah, me and you? Yeah. So we went through a season where it's like I was fine from like ages 3 to 7, and then from like 7 to 11, we were like, I don't know if that's Jesus, and then after that, we were okay with it, like we were cool with it. And so I would dress up usually like superheroes. And you get this, right? There's a point in your life where it's like it's like a kid thing, and then all of a sudden you get to middle school and it's like a kind of a fun hang out with your friends thing. And then in high school, it's just weird. It's just a weird thing. And then in adulthood, you're just making fun of other adults who do it along with you. You know what I mean? At parties, you're doing that. And then you get to see it through the eyes of your kids and that sort of thing. But by the time that we're kids, right, and you get this, you were taught this, you were celebrated this is a great thing. I want to show this word pretend, right? You were taught to pretend, right? You were taught that there were certain things that you could do that just kind of felt like it's not good or bad. It's just like you were pretending. My son does this right now, and it's so much fun. He doesn't quite understand what pretend means. And so anytime he does something that he knows not to be a good thing, he just says, now I'm pretending. So he threw a rock the other day at our car, and he goes, Daddy, I was just pretending. I'm like, that's not how that works, and so that sort of thing. But you get it, like when you're a kid, like you're dressing up for Halloween. I remember as a kid, as dorky as this sounds, I didn't have a Superman outfit. So what does every guy do that doesn't actually have an outfit? You grab a blanket, you tie it around here, and you put tidy whities on top of your jeans. Like that's what I did, and I ran around the house. No one else did? Okay. You just kind of do that, right? You just kind of run around. Like, I just pretended that I was I remember the time that I was a young kid. I tried to convince somebody that I was Superman. Like, because I was like pretending to the point that I'm like, no, I might actually be. I don't know. You don't know. Like you kind of feel this. I think we have a great phrase for it when you get older, right? When you get older, we just call it fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? Like, how many of you have ever heard somebody told you need to just fake it till you make it at some point, right? Come on, honest. I do this all the time. How many of you actually do that? Anybody else like, yeah, I do that all the time. I did that in dating. Right? Our first date, so this is off script. This will be fun. Our first date, I'm so introverted. I didn't know what to say to Emily, and so I literally I practiced the questions that I was going to say ahead of time. Like I had this written out. I knew. I memorized. And you're like, that's just kind of like faking it till you make it. I came off like not really at all, but I'm pretending to be someone who's good at dating, even if I wasn't. And there's some areas where that's good, Like as a parent, let's be honest, you rarely ever feel like you've arrived. And there's times where you're just like, I just feel like I'm kind of faking it till I make it. And that's okay. Some of you experienced this in high school, right? Some of you pretended to be cool in high school, right? You just pretend, you weren't actually cool. You just pretended to be, right? Anybody, you kind of had like the Magnum PI look combined with Breakfast Club, like at the same time, you were pretending. And you were pretending to be cool. Now, pretending is interesting in a lot of areas of our life. Pretending gets really weird, though, when it comes to relationships. In fact, I put it in my notes this way. I said this. Pretending becomes more complex when it's applied to our relationships. And the reason it becomes more complex is because of the foundation of every single one of your relationships is trust. The foundation of every single one of your relationships is you trusting the other person to show up in a real and authentic way. And oftentimes we say words like you're being fake. But the root of the problem is so much more than being fake. The root of the problem isn't that you're pretending or being fake or that you're not being authentic or however you want to put that. The root of the problem actually stems so much deeper than that. It's actually what we're trying to hide, because what we're actually trying to hide is our own level of brokenness, right? And you can have so many different words for this. You can talk about it in terms of sin. You can talk about it in terms of mistakes, whoopsies, your past, however you want to say this. But there's parts of you that you didn't get right, and there are parts of your life that you didn't have any control over, and then somebody did something to you, and it just kind of then you had brokenness on the other side of that, but you have brokenness in your life. And what we tend to do, especially in our culture, is we live in a world where we go I'm going to do my best to hide that thing, and whatever I present is better than the thing that feels broken in me. The problem with that is the parts of you that feel broken are the parts that actually draw other people in. Right? The people that you most admire, the people that you most admire, when they get like really honest and like really vulnerable about something, you don't go, I can't believe that. You go, tell me more. Any Will Smith fans in the room? Do we have any Will Smith? Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? West Philadelphia. I'm singing it with you as soon as I say it. He started this Instagram thing recently where he's like, I don't know how old he is. Is he like 50 or 40? I don't know how old, 50s. And so whatever's a big year that he's celebrating, and he started doing all these like random things, and he's filming the behind the scenes of him doing these things. Now, I love Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I love watching Will Smith. I love Miami. Like, I love all those records. I get it. But when Will Smith videos himself doing something like behind the scenes, off script, hanging with his kids, I'm like, I'm there. I'm all in to that part of it. That's why documentaries are so great on Netflix, right? That's why you lean into all of these things, because there's something about you, and I don't miss this, that leans into the brokenness of others, not to feel better about yourself, but so that you can look at somebody else and go, oh, me too. Me too. I felt that. I felt that too. Now the problem with this, and we'll take a deep dive here in a second, but the problem with this is that there are so many parts of our lives that we work so hard to keep hidden. And you see this all the time, but like you literally work hard to hide your insecurity. Guys, come on. Even with our spouses, come on, like you work hard to hide your insecurity. I jokingly said this the other day, even though I wasn't joking at all, but when I speak, that's kind of the thing that I do. I care what you think. I care a whole lot more about what Emily thinks. You know what I mean? Like there's a part of me that's like, I want her to be like, that was so good. You know, I appreciate your emails. It's great. But like, why? Because there's an insecurity thing. I'm like, I'm still trying to impress somebody. And you are too. You show up to the office, right? Maybe you're trying to impress your boss, or maybe you're even more importantly, you're trying to impress all the other coworkers, or maybe for you, you just want everybody to know that you are actually intelligent. And not just intelligent, but you're real intelligent. And not just real intelligent, but you are real intelligent, you know? And you like highlight these things all over the place for you. Really what you do is like, how do I hide the insecurity, or better put, how do you hide the weakness? And then we're going to jump into the text after this. And this is how you know, especially guys, look at me. This is how you know if you struggle with this at all. Which means when someone gets close to one of your insecurities, gets close to one of your weaknesses, there's an internal set of alarms that start yelling out at you, right? And you're good at distancing yourself. That's when like your brain cues, now it's time to be funny. Now it's time to be sarcastic. Now it's time to change the subject. Now it's time to with logic and end them, you know? Now it's time to show you a different version or facet of what I'm good at so that you don't see this thing over here. How do I redirect that? And anytime those alarms start going off, there should be something in your mind that cues up, wait a minute, what is that thing? We were at Target last night because it's Target. And they have the new iPhone. Did anybody get the new iPhone? Do we have any new iPhone? You probably don't want to raise your hand. I just want to know who you are so I can talk to you afterwards. I want it. I need it. So we were at Target, and I picked it up. And I guess I picked it up a little bit too passionately. And the alarm started going off in Target. And so I'm with me holding this iPhone like this. And then Emily and the kids are there. And I literally do this. I kid you not. When the alarms came off, I literally went. I put both hands up. And all these Target people like kind of started, they were laughing-ish, you know, but they came over and I'm like, I didn't do it. I wasn't trying to do it. No, it wasn't me. Like I backed up. Which is what I kind of want you to do when those alarms go off in your heart. When there's something in your heart that says, is that too close? There's something in your heart that says, is this, and this is a real question, is this safe for me? Because you could be extraordinarily safe and extraordinarily isolated at the same time. Be extraordinarily safe and have very little influence at the same time. You be extraordinarily safe and not live the life that ultimately you want to live all at the same time. So I put in my notes, I said this way, the brokenness that is hidden feels a lot safer than the brokenness in your life that's revealed. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it through the lens of a guy who ended up writing about half the New Testament. The guy's name is Paul. What's interesting about Paul is on this side of history, we love to talk about Paul and Christianity as if he's like, I mean, the guy wrote half the New Testament. We're like big fans of Paul, And Paul is interesting, though, because the way that he talks about himself, you would never think that he thinks he should have influence. The things that Paul talks about in terms of his internal struggle, even his insecurity, even his own mental health at times, the way that he talks about all these things, it's difficult to look at Paul in the ways that he identifies himself and go, wait, you're the guy who wrote half the New Testament. You're the guy who brought this to the Gentiles. You're the guy who essentially franchised, in some ways, the church all over the ancient world. You're the guy who did all that? Because Paul internally, he has these deep sort of moments of weakness. And he had all these critics and opponents, and people were questioning his credibility left and right. And there was this perceived weakness that other people even thought that he had outside of the faith. But what he does is he says, look, I'm going to boast about certain things, but it's not going to be in my own expertise or the things that I know. Because that kind of boasting isn't glorifying the right thing, and it's not even how I feel about myself. And then what he does is in this particular passage, he then pivots to talk about his own brokenness. And when you read it again on this side of history, it feels, I'm just going to be really honest, it feels all like, oh, that's so humble. Oh, you're such a good person. Oh, yeah. But the depth of what Paul is saying isn't touchy-feely like that. He's like saying, I'm awful. I am weak. I want to read you these words, and I want to show you how he pivots it. Here's what Paul says about himself. He says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, essentially to say, hey, in order to keep me from ever thinking more of myself than I actually should, or even better put in some ways, like in the translation, for me to be able to be viewed as a way that I actually am. He said this, I was given a thorn in my flesh, and I love the depth of drama around this, a messenger of Satan to torment me, Which I love. The thorn in your flesh is such a great image, right? You ever had a rock in your shoe? Anybody ever had a thorn that you didn't know you had until you bumped your finger again afterwards, and you're like, oh. I feel like it's more like a paper cut that just didn't heal. Anybody ever had one? I'm going to make you all sick before this is over, yeah. It's I have this thing that doesn't go away, and it's not like the end of the world, but it just doesn't stop nagging me. And it just doesn't stop ending. It's just always there. I have this thorn in my flesh, which a lot of scholars will talk about. It's likely not just a pain. It's likely a temptation he continually wrestle through and struggle with. And he goes on and he says this. He says, 3 times, I didn't just pray. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Which in the text is over and over and over again. I come to God open-handedly and say, not just take it away, make it easier for me. God, I am desperate for the weakness that I have to be eliminated in my life so that I can move forward with it. Now, some of you know what that's like. Some of you know what it's like to pray the same prayer year after year after year after year. Some of you know what it's like to go, I feel like I struggle with this day in, day out, every single day. Some of you know what it's like to not just have an insecurity, but it being so rooted in your heart that it's almost visible to you every time you look in the mirror. And you're just kind of God, let that thing be done. And yet it does not go away. And so we get this picture of Paul praying and pleading with God, take this temptation, take this thorn in my flesh, take this insecurity, take this thing away from me. And the response that he seems to get is both extremely unsettling and beautiful at the same time. What Paul shares next is this response. He says, but he, being God, says to me, my grace is, and can we say this? My grace is sufficient for you. Which is the response of God saying, look, I'm all that you need. You're pursuing your own version of trying to figure out how to get it right and get it done and get, But I'm all that you need. I'm the strength that you need. That you think your weakness is a way of diminishing the power of your life or the influence of your life or where you're moving towards in life. God's like, no. My grace is sufficient. It's enough. It's me leaning into the broken parts of who you are. Now, realistically, for me, I'm a fixer. Do we have any other fixers in the room? Like, you're like a real fixer. Not like actually fix things, because that's not me. But like fix. I'm a fixer. I like to pray the prayer like that. Like, here's my brokenness, now just fix it and make it better. Or if I have enough faith, and you'll just take it away, you know? The God of the universe, I don't know if look at me for a second. The God of the universe is never going, oh, I just want to remove your weakness. The response is, my grace is sufficient for you. And it goes on, it says this, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Now, here's the problem. Right? Here's the problem. Guys, especially, just for a second. Wake back up. Look at me for a second. Here's the problem. Is you don't want to be dependent on anybody. Even the God in the cosmos kind of depend. You don't want to be dependent on anybody. And the fact that there are parts of your life where you find yourself weak and have to be dependent on something beyond you is not only unsettling, it frustrates you. And it frustrates me. Which means that a lot of times we just move forward and bang our head against the wall, trying to do the old thing, over and over and over and over again. But at the end of the day, it's like, no. The God of the universe isn't waiting for you to strive harder to fix all of the parts of your life that are broken, and then he's going to go, oh, now we're ready. He's not waiting on you as whatever this thing is that you are to be polished and shiny and, and there. He's waiting on you to be submissive to him and rely on his power. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. And then it says this. For when I am weak, it's Paul talking, then I am actually strong. And he's not saying like my weakness are now like my perfect strength. That's not what he's saying. He's saying when I'm weak, and I find myself dependent on God, then that weakness that is submitted to God becomes the platform by which God decides to use many of us. Which means the broken parts of your story that you work so hard to hide may actually be the thing that God is waiting on you to submit to him so that he can actually use. That maybe God's not as interested in your amazing ability to fill in whatever the blank is. That maybe he's waiting on you to say, hey, this is this thing that I don't know what to do with, and it's broken, and you've redeemed it, but I don't want anybody to actually know. And God's like, no. That's what I'm going to use. That's what I'm going to use to change the world. It requires from you, and this is the hard part, and this is where we're going to spend the rest of our time. It requires from you vulnerability. And I feel like when we talk about this in church world, or like in a church service, or like religious areas, we're really comfortable with vulnerability. But when you actually apply vulnerability to any other area of your life, but like your inner world, no one likes to say that we're vulnerable. Like no business owner goes, I'm excited that our organization is vulnerable now. No person handling your financial portfolio goes, you know what, your vulnerability, this is a good thing. Like nobody does that. You didn't watch Game of Thrones and they were like, we're vulnerable. Like nobody did that, Like what actually happens is vulnerability not only feels like a weakness, but it feels like you're going to be hurt or damaged or done. But for us, it comes back to saying, no, when it comes to relationships and influence in your life and what God might choose to use, it requires you saying there's this broken part, and not only am I going to reveal it, but I'm going to reveal the redemptive story that God has for this. Which means some of you like really messed up your marriage at one point. And then God redeemed it. But you don't want anybody to know about it. But yet there's a couple out there who need so desperately to hear the story of how God took that brokenness and redeemed it. Some of you are in a season right now where you're like, there's parts of my story that I don't want anybody to ever know. And there's a part of you that still kind of wants to say it, but just not sure how people would take it, but be like, how do I do it? I don't know. So you just keep hiding it, and you've been hiding it for years and years and years and years. And God's just like, just say it out loud one time, And then you say it's like a breath. Because your weakness becomes the platform that God uses to do something. But in our minds and in our figuring out how to hide it and in our like doing this kind of thing to it all, come on. Your story, I put it this way, your story either becomes or points to the power of God or it points to the power of you. And the reason that we both know that it's not going to point to the power of you is because you never figured it out on your own, right? The most broken parts of yourself you didn't figure out on your own. And when that's true, now come on, and when you recognize this and when you kind of get to that place and you go, look, even the most broken parts and even when they're redeemed or even when they're not, we're kind of working through that. Come on, I get to point to the submission and power of God. And that's the beauty in our story. That's the part of you that leans in. Now, come on, if you've been around here for a while, everybody talks about, I love how you talk about your mom and your dad and, how you single parent home mom. Thank you for being so open. I'm like, I hate talking about it. I never wake up and go, I'm so excited to tell you that I grew up without a dad. I'm not going to tell that story. What is it that? That's the brokenness that draws you in. How many of you were at the very first render that we did? Anybody remember that? Anybody at the very first one? Yeah. I told a story that I never told ever before on a stage. And I threw up my nose, and people there were like, oh my gosh, I never knew that. And then we had several people come up like, oh, that's what I was thinking, that's what I was feeling. And the part of this that's hard is like, I never wanted to talk about that. I still don't want to talk about that. But the vulnerable part is what actually connects you to other humans. Your best friend and you are connected, not because they have it all together, because you have it all together, but because they know you're junk, and you've been vulnerable to whatever point you've been vulnerable, and they go, look, you are still a part of this thing. I accept you. You are here. We are friends. I don't know. You're in that, But as long as you hide it, as long as you choose not to be vulnerable, come on, you will always have some wall that disconnects you from other people. Put this in my notes. It says, in the kingdom of God, your weakness is always an opportunity for the power of God to be displayed. And you get to choose. I don't know why God set it up this way, but you get to choose. Are you going to lean into that, or will you not? You get to choose whether or not you're going to say, I'm weak here, and I'm going to lean into the redemptive work of God, and then from there my story will be shared. Or not. And so the bottom line I want you to take away, and then we're going to wrap up in a second, is this. And it's super simple, and I know it's simple, but God's power is made perfect in your weakness. Which, come on, at the baseline of being vulnerable with other people, you either deep down believe this, or you don't. You either decide, my weakness is an opportunity for God to use something, or you don't. You intellectually get this, you get this in your head, but do you actually live as if the God of the universe redeems your weaknesses and does something with them? So for us, this is kind of my challenge for you as we kind of wrapped up this series and kind of what I've been wrestling through and trying to figure out how we're going to end it. But we've asked you to be a part of groups over the last few weeks. Last week we kind of threw things out and talked about community and what it actually means to be a part of it, like a healthy community. But for many of you, it's not even that. It's the foundation of your relationships in general. That you have to just decide, are you going to lean into this or not? Like, you have to decide, everybody, just for a second, everybody, you have to decide, am I going to prioritize influence, authentic relationship with people, or am I going to prioritize being safe, not being hurt, being distant, being whatever the version of the intellectual, funny, logical, whatever the ways that you distance other people, you have to decide which one you're going to be. But for those of you in the room who are just tired of doing that, the way out of that is moment by moment saying, I'm going to choose to go further than I feel comfortable going right now. It means when you sit with other people at dinner and they ask you the question and all those target alarms go off in your head and you, whatever, that you look at that and say, I'm going to choose to have the courage to say, I don't know. To say, this is actually what I struggle with. To say, this is my insecurity. To say, I don't believe that. Some of you, you're here and you're super skeptical about the whole thing. I love that. I love talking to people who are so skeptical. I love talking to Christians who are super skeptical. But here's what I would tell you. If you're skeptical and it's hidden, that's just unhelpful for you and everybody else. Be skeptical and be vocal about it. Be open. Say, I don't know if I believe what Genesis said. Oh my God, don't tell anybody else, you know? Because here is a safe place to go, sweet. Welcome to the club. Let's figure that out together. Come on, this is part of why 3 questions exist, so that you can come with other people and say, here's my skepticism to the whole thing. Like, you've got to be willing to go there when it comes to your faith, when it comes to your relationship with all of that. And say, I'm going to put all that on the table and trust you with it. So, to wrap up our time, I wanted to show you these lyrics to this song, and then we're going to wrap up with a story in a minute. But when I was in 7th grade for the first time, I started struggling with something that I didn't have context for, didn't know about, and didn't know what to do with. And what I started struggling with was panic attacks. And if you've ever had a panic attack, you know that's not fun at all. Yeah, some of you are raising your hands. Yeah, some of you are having one right now. It's going to be okay, right? So you're like, is this message almost over, you know? I started having a panic attack. I don't know what to do with it, because every time I had one, I legitimately thought I was dying. Like, I thought I was dying. And I would have them at like the most inopportune moments. And my mom, it was just me and my mom, we didn't know what to do with it. So I just, for a long time, a couple of years actually, I would struggle with this. And then they went away for a while, like I was done with it. And then I got back to college, and I was kind of on my own. I started doing things, and I started having them again. And I would have them again specifically around things that I felt like I needed to be doing, like places that I loved, you know, speaking or leading worship, those things. And I remember one night I was studying in my dorm room. My roommate was gone, and the way that it works for me, it's different for everybody, but I could almost feel it coming on, and I felt more and more anxious, and then it would just continue to grow, and for a long time I didn't know how to get out of it. And so I went to the bathroom, and we had like these shared bathrooms between 2 groups, and nobody else was there in the dorm. And I'm sitting on the floor of the dorm, and just like uncontrollably like scared, just like bawling, like struggling through it. And I didn't know what to do. And when it comes to mental health, especially, like there's not like a thing that you just, I mean, you know, there's not just like, oh, there's a switch, or there's like a 4-step plan, or there's like no, like anybody that tells you that, they're dumb. Don't listen to that. That's not it. But there was a moment that I remember saying, this is going to last for however long it lasts. And when it's over, I'm going to have to like rustle through, is this ever something that I'm going to share with people? And Emily and I have been dating, I think, for a while at this point. And I remember the first time that I shared it even with Emily, right? I was so anxious to even like admit like that kind of fear or weakness, you know? I didn't want to tell her. I remember the first time that I shared it with a friend, one of my close friends, and I remember feeling like so anxious, and I remember going, oh, I don't want to talk about parts of my life that I don't want anybody to see. And then I came across this song that's written out of this verse, and I did not genuinely believe what we're talking about today until I heard the song. And it's not that the song is so great, but it's the lyrics of it are straight out of this text, and it paints such a beautiful picture of what it means to move forward in this. And the lyrics of the song simply say this. It says, your grace is sufficient for me. Your strength is made perfect when I am weak. This is the part that, I mean, you've seen this in the text, but it says, and all that I cling to, I lay at your feet. Which for me meant like all the stuff that I cling to and like needing to be acknowledged as fill in the blank. Needing to be a person who is recognized as fill in the blank. Needing to be viewed as somebody who have it all together, fill in the blank. Needing to be a person who didn't have any insecurity, fill in the blank with all those things. And I remember this image of saying, all that I'm doing this to, I come to God the Father and lay it at his feet, trusting him with it. It says, your grace is sufficient for me. Now, the version I had didn't have the second part, and so I went and found these lyrics from the original writer, and it says this. It says, I'm no longer striving to merit your love. This means that I'm no longer on my own navigating this, like striving to get it done on my own. I rest in your promise to me. Your mercy has triumphed where I should be judged. And so now by your grace, I am free. And so we've been talking about community throughout the series. We've been talking about you getting a small group throughout the series. I hope you do all that. But even more than I hope you do all that, I hope some of you today begin the process of settling this. And when it comes to my relationships, when it comes to my closest relationships, when it comes to stepping into any kind of relationship, then I'm going to acknowledge my weakness. And I'm not just going to hide it. I'm going to say this brokenness is an opportunity for God to use. And I don't have to strive to be good, perfect, whatever that is anymore. I don't have to strive to be viewed as whatever that is anymore. But I'm going to choose to lay this down, all of those things, at God's feet and say, you take it. It's yours. All the things that I cling to, I'm laying at your feet. Why? Because your grace and your grace alone is sufficient for me. That your goodness is enough for me. That in my failures, your grace is enough for me. Some of you in the room, come on, can we be really blunt for a second? You're here, I got a mic, so of course we are. You can't do anything about it. Come on. Some of you are divorced, and that's like your defining thing. Like I failed at that. Like you feel that failure, or someone failed you in that. And you go, you know what? That's how I'm defined. That's my thing. And at the end of the day, come on, look at me for a second. It's like, hey, that's this part of your brokenness, whatever that is. But God can redeem that and do something extraordinary through your story moving forward. Well, nobody ever likes to talk about this, but this is really tough. Some of you, at some point along the way, were abused, or you were sexually abused. And you've not only not talked about it, but it's like something that's in the back of your whole like psyche and life and world, and you kept it there, and nobody knows, and you feel is shame. You constantly feel shame, and you figured out ways to put stuff in front of people that no one would ever even know, but your alarms go off every time that you're around somebody, like then they even get close to that part of your story. Like, come on, it doesn't mean you need to share it with everybody, but what does it look like to take that and say, I'm going to be vulnerable with those broken parts of my life, and at least begin to say, I'm going to acknowledge it and get that in front of somebody who can come alongside me. Some of you, come on, fellas in the room, I'd love to talk about this just for a second. And this is me all day long. You never feel intelligent enough, smart enough, good enough, leader enough, marketable enough, climb the laddery enough. Yeah, I added a Y to that. Whatever that is, enough. And you see other people who do. You see other people, like how much they make. You see all these things. And there's a part of your story that's so deeply connected to your self-worth getting so wrapped up into that. Now, come on. When was the last time you ever looked at anybody and said, I just feel insecure about the enough thing? And you began there. Like, you don't have to solve it. You don't have to go into all these, but like, who knows, other than the people that observe it in you, that you don't feel like enough? And the thing for you is to go like, I'm going to be vulnerable about that part. My story. We'll do a couple more and then we'll be done. Some of you, this is like some sort of addiction. It could be alcohol. It could be some sort of porn addiction. It could be, it's all sorts of addiction. Come on. And the silver bullet isn't that you just recognize it or are vulnerable with it, but the beginning part of this process is for you acknowledging that it's there and saying, I'm going to dig whatever that thing is up, and I'm going to get it out in the open. Because, come on, look at me for a second. At some point or another, whatever that void is going to look at
Well, what's up, everybody? My name is Ryan. I'm one of the worship leaders here. Just wanted to say thank you so much for coming. How's everybody doing? You guys doing good? Cool. We're excited for the service today. If this is your first time, we just want to really emphasize that we really do our best to try to make this a safe place to explore your faith. And it's going to be a great day today. So here in a few moments, the band, we're going to lead you guys in some songs and some singing. But for right now, if you guys want, feel free to stand up, turn to the person next to you, and give them a handshake, give them a hug, whatever feels comfortable. If you know them, say what's up. If you don't, say what's up still. And we'll get started here in a few moments.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick, and I just wanted to say thanks again for watching our service today online and being a part of this community. Now, we know that you might have some questions as you watch the service today and want to find out a little bit more information about who we are. And so we've created an environment for you to do just that. Simply go to startingpoint.today. That's startingpoint.today and fill out that short form, and one of our staff members will reach out to you very shortly and answer any questions that you have about our church and about who we are. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll be back at the end of the service today to give you a little bit more information, but we'll see you here in just a few minutes.
I was buried beneath my shame, and who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive, and all my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. Sing it out. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave, oh, out of the darkness into your glorious day. My soul. Who believes that this morning? Come on, let's sing this out. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new. Jesus, when I met you, we sing you called my name. Shout it, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Yeah, you called my name, and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. All right, let's sing this out from our story, from our past, from what God has done. I needed rescue. My sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter. I was an orphan. Now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, and when you call my name, come on, let's shout it out. Oh, ran out of that grave, out of the darkness into your glorious day. Yeah, enemies. I'll raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I'll raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I'll raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Out from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Come on, let's sing. I'll raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. I'll raise a hallelujah, and I will watch the darkness flee. I'll raise a hallelujah in the middle of the mystery. I'll raise a hallelujah. Fear you lost your hold on me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Out from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Sing a little louder,
In the presence of my enemies,
sing a little louder,
louder than the unbelief.
sing a little louder,
My weapon is a melody.
sing a little louder,
Heaven comes to fight for me.
sing a little louder,
In the presence of my enemies,
sing a little louder,
louder than the unbelief.
sing a little louder,
My weapon is a melody.
sing a little
Heaven comes to fight for me.
I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Out from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is
Well, 11 o'clock, how are we feeling this morning? We feeling pretty good? Feeling pretty caffeinated? No, not at all. No, not so much. Hey, we're so glad you're here. My name is Patrick. I'm lead pastor here. If it's your first time, I'd say big shout out to you. We're so glad you decided to join us today, especially bearing the weather conditions. You made it in the rain, people. It's pretty great. It's better than the snow, am I right? I'm really excited about that. Sorry, it rained and it didn't snow. Anyway, hey, we're so glad you're here. Here's what I'd love you to do. Thanks for singing with us. Go ahead and turn to like 4 or 5 people around you. Give them a high five. Let them know, hey, you look great today. Like, thanks so much for joining us. Give them a high five. And you can have a seat. And then we will continue on. Don't lie about it, but you got to like be, hey, loving it. Loving it. You're looking great. You do look great. You guys got the fall thing going on. You can go ahead and have a seat after that. Oh, so glad you're here. I have had a lot of coffee today, so I'm very caffeinated. Yeah, you can go ahead and have a seat. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. And if you're new to our church, again, big shout out to you. If you're new, I always like to tell people you're amongst, I think, some of the most amazing people on the planet, and for many reasons, I think. But if you attend our church, many of you are part of not just like ministries, and a lot of times people just assume like church just happens on Sunday and whatever that is, but really for us, church isn't just about Sunday. It's about what we kind of live throughout the week and the organizations that we partner with, the difference that we're making locally and then all over the world. And so we just want to say to those of you who partner with us, thank you so much. To those of you who volunteer here, I want to say thank you so much. I won't do this to him again, but I called out a friend of mine. His name is Regan. Today we have a high school student that gets here roughly at like 6 a.m. on Sunday mornings and helps us run video work. And right now he's in the back. Actually, you know what? Forget it. Do you mind if I bring him out again? Are you guys up for that? Regan, come on out here real quick. Regan is in the back. Right now, he's crawling over 4 or 5 chairs and 4 or 5 people and making his way out here. Let me tell you about Regan real quick. Regan has been serving here, I think I asked him at a 9. I think he said right at about 8 years, so since he was in middle school. And they get up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. There he is. Regan, everybody. I felt like a middle school dad when I did that. That wasn't great. Anyway, but Regan's been here, and he's been serving for a long time, and he's made such an impact, such a difference. He's so talented, too. But the fact that we have high school students that make time to do that, the fact that we have high school students that get up early, anyway, right? Like, I think that's amazing. But I just wanted to say in front of all these people, Regan's going off to college, and so he's going to be leaving us. But I just want to say thank you so much for the investment that you've made here and the difference that you've made and all of the things that you do that have buttons that they don't let me touch. But I'm so glad that you do and that we have that. So can you guys just help me thank Regan, all the other high schoolers that are part of this? Thank you so much, bro. Thank you. Anyway, all that said, so this place is really run by volunteers. People show up just like Regan and all over the place. And then it happens because you give. And so we just wanted to say thank you so much for all the ways that you partner with us. So we're going to invite our ushers to move forward. If you're new to our church, this isn't just for you, but for us, we're like, hey, there's some of you who have been around for a while, and you've been attending our church. I think I jokingly said this a few weeks ago. You attend all the time. In fact, somebody asked you recently, where do you go to church? And you said Kensington, and you felt weird, like, oh, are we there yet? Are we Facebook official? I don't know, but apparently we were when you said it. So it's pretty great. And so we want to invite you, like if you attend our church, we want you to get involved. We want you to volunteer. We would love to invite you to be a part of giving, making all of this happen that we do here. So if you're interested in giving or giving for the first time, there's a few ways you can do that. You can always text the word Kensington to the number 77977. You can always give in less than 10 seconds on the app, or you can go to kensingtonchurch.org/giving. But we want to say thank you so much to all of you who partner with us to make these things happen. And the other thing I want to let you know is we have a couple events coming up, so I want to put these on your radar. Where are the fellas at real quick? Fellas, can I get like a masculine grunt thing? That's currently the highlight of my day. That was amazing. I love it. You know what I did? Yeah, so Man Up, that's awesome. So Man Up's coming up, and we want you to be a part of this. If you've never been to Man Up's one of my favorite things that we do because we get away just for like a couple days. There's about 800 to 1,000 guys that come to this. We go to Spring Hill Camp, and we have a lot of fun. There's all sorts of like fun things that you can do, and then there's messages that are geared specifically towards men, and so we're going to be talking about incredible things. And then this year we have a guy named Stephen Carter, who's one of my favorite speakers really on the planet. He's going to be there and talking about a lot of stuff. So we'd love for you to join us. There's all sorts of fun things to do throughout. I think they have like a shooting range. They have like sports. We do all sorts of competition stuff. And then there's a few of us like me who sneak away and play video games for a while. So it's great too. So we would love for you to join us wherever you're at on that. But again, it's coming up October 11th to 13th, and you can sign up at kensingtonchurch.org/manup. So let us know if you're interested in that. Do it at the hub, or you can do it online. And the other thing is we also have a date night coming up. This is, again, I love these date nights that we have. We actually just turn this room upside down. We set it up like a big date night for you, your spouse, the person that you're dating or that you're engaged to, and you come, and we have like fun stuff that we kind of do together. It's always a little bit weird, like, can we do that in church? And we're like, we're going to do that anyway. So it's fun. It's slightly irreverent, kind of crazy, but on the other side of it, the content is really geared at helping you to have a better relationship, and so you get those pieces as well. So we'd love you to sign up for that. The early bird deadline is closing in the next few weeks, so again, we'd love for you to sign up. You can do that in the hub or, again, online at kensingtonchurch.org. You find out all the information there. But we'd love for you to go ahead and sign up for date night. We want to make sure to be able to do this, so let us know that you're coming to this. And then the last thing is, which is crazy to me that we're this close to this event, but we have an event called Treat Street that we do every year. And what we do is we essentially do like a trunk or treat at Traverse Heights Elementary School. And we go, and what we do is we show up. Our goal this year is about 50 cars that we want to do. So you bring your car, you decorate the car, you dress up like whatever it is that you're going going to dress up as, and then you bring candy. But the bigger win for us is that we're creating an environment for these kids that we're already partnering with, and many of them are being mentored by so many of you. And so we would love for you to join us in that. Again, our goal this year is 50 cars. We'd love to be able to do that, and it's that easy. So I think last year, this is how we did it. I think last year, where were we last year? Were we Back to the Future. Is that right? I was Doc from Back to the Future. It's great. I wanted to be Marty, but Henry got that. It's fine. I'm past it. We're good. But anyway, we love for you to do this. We love for you to join us for this. So again, you come with your car, you decorate the car, you dress up. But again, it's a big opportunity for us just to invest in the lives of these kids. So we'd love for you to join us for that. And the other thing I want to let you know about, which I'm, again, super excited about, is we started talking to so many of you who've been attending our church for a while. And we found out that so many of you attend, and you actually have, you have questions about some of the content that we've been talking about, and, how do I take next steps? Many of you are skeptics in the room, which, again, I love. That's one of my favorite things, is if I could get every skeptic in Traverse City that was kind of curious about faith, but kind of distant from the religion thing. I wish they would all just show up here on a weekend. But so many of you are kind of in that place. And so what we did is we took the three biggest questions that we feel like people are asking here at our church beyond the weekend, and said, let's break those down, and we're going to talk about those for 3 weeks. And so for the next 3 weeks, in between our services, there's a group of people that are going to be meeting, and really we're going to kind of tackle one of those questions together. So we would love for you to join us for that. It's called 3 Questions. You can sign up in the lobby. It's going to be led by really one of my favorite people on the planet, and he's super sharp and, again, great facilitator, so you're going to love that. So we'd love for you to join us for that as well. And then the last thing, and then we'll be done with all of our announcements, is next week we're kicking off a brand new series. The series is called Why Bible, and I'm so excited about this series personally. If you grew up in church like I did, I was presented a version or a view of the Bible that I mean, as bad as it sounds, I felt like I kind of outgrew. And if there's anybody here who kind of feels that, what we're going to do over the next 5 weeks is talk about that. So we're going to kind of unearth a lot of the tensions that I felt, that a lot of you have probably felt, with the way that we approach Scripture, and then talk about what it looks like to really talk about the Bible in an adult way, not just in the way that you were handed it as a kid. And so we'd love for you to come. We'd love for you to invite people, but to get you thinking in that direction, here's a short video about that content.
It is estimated that over 6 billion Bibles are in circulation throughout the world today. By far the best-selling book of all time. But why should we read it? We live in a culture where very few are familiar with this book. It could be intimidating and hard to understand. Many feel it's an archaic book that doesn't relate to modern-day life. This 5-week series will give an overview of the different sections of the Bible and how it all flows together. We will also look at how to understand and interpret Bible passages and apply them to our lives. Could it be possible that God desires to transform us through His written word? Join us as we discover together all the Bible has to offer.
So I would say, here's the viewers in our church, most of us know that 1 or 2 or 3 people, at the office or friends that you have that already have a pre-canned answer to why the Bible doesn't matter, right? Most of us have that friend. This is that series for that friend, right? So I would love if you would to invite people to this. It's going to be a great series. We're going to say things that I promise are going to make us all uncomfortable. So it's going to be fun, including me. So, again, I would love for you to be a part of this and invite people back to that series. Now, today what we're doing is we're wrapping up our series called Color of Your Dishes. And what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks is talking about community and how to be in community well and what that looks like. And so to get us thinking in that direction, I want to invite up my friends real quick. This is Ryan Valdivia. Everybody say, hey, Ryan. And then Brian Jackson. You know him as Brian Jackson. This is Brian. Everybody say Brian. And then this is Maddie. Everybody say, hey, Maddie. Maddie's one of my favorite people on the planet. I won't take too long to embarrass Maddie, but Maddie is really kind of a part of our family, and then we discovered that she sang, and she's so good. And so she's going to be singing along for the next few minutes, and so we kind of dragged her up here. I almost said drugged. It's not that. We dragged her up here. English is bad for me. Yeah, anyway. But Maddie's going to be singing. It's an incredible song, and the song that we're going to be talking about is a song that's really geared at kind of opening our eyes to your story, right? And so we're essentially at the beginning of this message today saying we all have a story, and we're going to kind of go deep in some of this content today about your story and what it looks like. And so for the next few minutes, I want you to listen to the song, but not just experience the song or feel it. I want you to pay attention to the lyrics that we're going to be saying for the next few minutes because I think it really applies to what we're going to be talking about and what this looks like. So one more time, give it up for these guys, and we'll do this song.
Sun's always rising, but you'd rather keep hiding from the loss that you've endured. Is anyone listening? Or are we all walking past each other's open doors? 'Cause you've got a song to sing that nobody else can dream.
Today's a brand new start. To anyone who's ever had a broken heart, you don't have to stay alone. No matter who went away and left you on your own, 'cause you got a song to sing that nobody else can dream. And if you don't sing it, then no one else will. 'Cause it's just your song to sing.
And now the time's come for you to recognize who you are and what you'd like to do. And each day presents a choice, whether to hide your dreams or give yourself a voice. 'Cause you've got a song to sing that nobody else's dream. You may not sing aloud and you may not feel proud, but what's there to lose? You just got to choose to sing. 'Cause you've got a song to sing.
So good. I love that song in part because it kind of highlights something that's true of so many of us, right? And that's something that we don't always acknowledge. Sometimes we pretend that it's not there, or sometimes we just don't know what to do with it. And that's it. You have a unique story, right? Like there's something about your life that is different than everybody else's life. In fact, like the people in this room, we could all bring you up and you could tell your story and you could talk about the things that have mattered to you and talk about your success. You could talk about your failure. You could talk about your angst. You could talk about your fears. And all of us would have slightly different kind of versions of all those things. And then beyond that, what's even more interesting is that when it comes to your story, when it comes to, your insecurity and strength and all those things, the other part about that is that it's also not that unique, right? Like you do have a unique thing, but at the end of the day, the one thing that unites all of us is that we're all human and we're all like trying to experience this thing together. We're all trying to figure out life a little bit together. We're all trying to understand how do we kind of operate and be in the world and do it well. And if you're married, you're trying to figure out how do you do marriage well. If you're parenting, you're trying to figure that out or really trying to figure that out. And then you're trying to sleep every once in a while. And I'm fine. But anyway, like you just kind of working through what does it look like to do those things well. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about your story. But more than that, I think I want to talk about Like the parts of your story that you don't like to tell, right? And all of us have those parts of our stories. Like there are pieces of the things that you've, kind of lived through or experienced that you just kind of keep close to the chest and you don't talk about, and you just kind of like, that's yours, right? It's just yours and it's not anybody else's, but it's kind of a part of your story. And I want to talk about that for a few minutes, because I think at the end of the day, the thing about our culture, especially in the world that we live in now, is like if you have Facebook, Instagram, or the Twitters, or Snapchat, or TikTok, or I'm missing some. There's about 700 more, right? Those are the ones I can keep up with. Like we tend to present ourselves in a certain way, right? And we're good at it. Like we're so good at it. Like we're so good at like making ourselves seem like we've got it together, or we've got, something figured out. That's the other part that's always fun for me. Yesterday we were at the park, and I think I posted like 3 pictures of, our kids, and then me and our kids. And I looked at it, but there were about 784 more pictures where no one was smiling. People were yelling and throwing things, right? I mean, that's just kind of like the other pictures of our lives, right? Like that nobody quite sees. And you're good at editing out your own imperfections, right? You do that like with your camera app or whatever that is. But you're also good at that with like your emotions. Like you're really good at editing out the things that you don't want other people to see. And those of you in the room, come on, those of you who are leaders in the room, you're real good at this. Like you're really good at making sure that other people don't know what it is that you struggle with, or that you might feel insecure about or weak. And weakness is viewed as like this thing that no one else needs to see in you. The problem with that, like if we just be really honest for a second, like again, you're in church, so you can't really lie in church, right? But it's kind of exhausting, right? Like you just kind of get tired of like seeming like you have it all together all the time, Like you're kind of just tired of like pretending, and you're kind of tired of hiding, you're kind of tired of like keeping those things in a box. It's like some of you, again, you almost feel like you're gonna burst, and when you burst, it's just feel like, oh. Have you ever had that friend that you just like burst in front of, like in that way? Like you're just like, oh, I can finally just tell you everything, and it comes out, and you're like, by the end of it, you're like, I just said a lot of things to you, And you feel a little bit embarrassed and ashamed by that. I want to talk about that. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I just don't think we were kind of meant to live with these things that we're trying to hide or keep so close to the chest, right? I don't think you were meant to live like that, even though you were brought up that way, right? Now, let me give one caveat. Can I give one caveat real quick? For every guy in the room, I want you to look at me just for a second. Every guy in the room has already tuned out, and I know that. So everybody look at me real quick, every fella in the room. As soon as we start talking about this, most guys are like, there's probably a category of this, but I don't really want to talk about it or deal with it. Or if there is a category of this, I'm fine. That's totally good. And I get it. So I'm going to ask you for the next few minutes to like fully engage, right? And the reason I'm going to ask you to fully engage, specifically those of you who are fellas in the room, is because you are probably just as good or better than every other fella in the room at distancing yourself from what we're going to talk about. The problem with that is that we'll always catch up to you. And the problem on the other side of that is, and you know this because many of you have experienced it, and if you haven't, just talk to somebody in their mid-40s who's like struggling through some sort of like midlife thing, right? If you don't deal with it, at some point like that void or darkness or kind of area of your life that you haven't kind of dealt with, it just kind of looks up at you at some point and says, get down here. Like it pulls you down. That was an amazing voice. Wow. I didn't know I could do that. Wow, it was like a really evil Barry White. Anyway, so it like pulls you down in some way, and when it pulls you down, if it's the one that pulls you down and you haven't dealt with it, you're going to be in a lot worse place. And so I want to talk about that before that ever happens to you. Now, I told you that you kind of grew up this way, and we all did. Most of us grew up with this version of like pretending, right? Like you were taught at some point along the way that it was okay for you to pretend, and it is okay for you to pretend, right? How many of you celebrated Halloween growing up? Like you had Halloween, you dressed up. Anybody at some point in your life like me where you weren't allowed to do Halloween? Anybody else? The uber Christians, right? Like you remember these days where you just weren't allowed to celebrate it, and it's like, I just want to dress up like a baseball player, not Satan. Like I think we're fine, but you weren't allowed to or whatever that was. And so for me, I went through like an area of like 3 to like 7 where I did, and then like 7 to like 9 or 10 I wasn't allowed to. And Halloween's so interesting. It's so funny because, when you dress up, you're kind of taught like for this night or whatever it is, you're going to pretend to be something that you're not. And then you're kind of good at that, and it's fun. You dress up like whatever it is that you dress up as. You go get free candy, so all those things feel great. But then that kind of carries over, and it kind of follows you, and at some point along the way, you're taught to pretend, and some of you, when you get to be in adulthood, you just have a different phrase for it. You just say, fake it till you make it. Anybody remember that? Like, how many of you have ever been told, fake it till you make it? You know, like, I'm going to fake it until you make it, and then what you're doing is you're just putting on this facade of, like, I can do this. I've got it all together, but on the inside, you're like, oh, dear God. You know, like, you just kind of do that, and that's just kind of the adult version of that. At some point along the way, some of you are in high school, and you pretended to be cool, but you actually weren't. Anybody else do that? Come on, be honest. Like, you kind of had like a Magnum PI and Breakfast Club thing going at the same time. Yeah, we know. Anyway, so like you just pretended, and you can pretend to be cool for a long time and even convince people that you're cool for a long time, but at some point along the way, you still snorted. You know what I mean? Like, you still laughed and you snorted, and it just ended. You turned into Urkel, it goes over. You just know what it's like to pretend and then feel the weight of it like falling apart. And pretending isn't necessarily a bad thing. Faking it till you make it isn't necessarily a bad thing until you start applying it to relationships. Because when you apply pretending like that to relationships, it just becomes significantly more complex. You can put it this way. Pretending, right, becomes more complex when you apply it to the relationships that you have. And you've experienced this with other people. When you've looked at somebody and you go, that just feels fake. You just don't feel like a real person. You just feel, whatever version of that, you feel fake. But the problem isn't somebody being fake. And the problem isn't somebody being inauthentic, right? That's just what floats at the surface. The deeper problem, and it's not just a them thing, it's also a you thing, and it's also a me thing. The deeper problem is that all of us in this room have experienced some form of brokenness in our own life. And that brokenness for you, however you talk about it or think about it or look at it, is something that many of us work really hard to keep hidden. And the reason that you feel like you got to keep it hidden is because you feel like if other people saw it, then you wouldn't feel safe anymore. Or if other people saw that thing, they would think less of you at some point or another. Like, very rarely do you see somebody like have extreme moments of vulnerability and at the same time feel extremely comfortable at the same time. But on the other side of this, and this is where we spend our time talking about, you crave it in the people that you admire. In fact, some people that you admire, you primarily admire them because of their moments of vulnerability. Do we have any Will Smith fans in the room? Come on. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? You're singing it. West Philadelphia. Yeah. Miami? Anyway, so we'll just... The whole Big Willie style album, I'm a big fan of. Anyway, so Will Smith, I loved, right? And then I guess it's been about a year ago. I don't know. He started making these like behind the scenes videos. Have anybody seen these on Instagram? Where he's like, I'm now, I don't know how old he is. He's in his 40 maybe or like 50. I don't know how old he is. And he turned a big number. He's like, now this year I'm going to do all of my bucket list. And so the whole video is essentially like him kind of gearing up for these big moments that he's doing. And I love it. And here's why I'm so engaged in it. Because it's behind the scenes Will Smith. Which is just as cool, if not more cool, as Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and DJ Jazzy Jeff Will Smith. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, and so I'm like watching this going, I'm so fascinated. Why am I so fascinated? I'm so fascinated because I'm watching Will Smith be afraid of something and talk about it. And I'm watching him with his kids and mess up. And I'm watching him do stand-up comedy and go, that was real bad, And go like, that's interesting. Why is that interesting? Because you don't just connect with people's like highlight reel. You more deeply connect with people's vulnerability. You more deeply connect with people who like kind of at least let you into something, right? And I think it's so interesting, and I think that applies to you too. So I put this in my notes. I said it this way. I said that there are parts of our lives that we work so hard to keep hidden. But what I'm going to try my best to do for the next few minutes is go, for many of us, the way that we're working so hard to do that, you're already exhausted. You're tired of doing that. What if you didn't have to do that with your life? What if you didn't have to keep all of those parts hidden? What if you weren't afraid? Now, here's how you know, and then we'll jump into the text after this. There are parts of your life that you know you don't want anybody else to see, and if they start to get close, you have like these internal alarms that go off in your head, right? Some of you remember this when you were dating, that you can talk about some things, you can even appear to be vulnerable in certain areas until it gets to that one thing. But then when they get close to that one thing, all the alarms go off, and here's what you do because you're smart and you're good at this. You've got a joke to derail the conversation in a different way. You can be sarcastic, or you're really good at changing the subject and deferring. You're just great at it. I'm great at this. Like, I love that. Anytime you get close and I don't want you to see it, I'm like, yeah, that's really great. Let me say something else, And you defer. Now here, the alarms start going off, and the alarms in those moments matter so much more than you know, because that's your initial response of protecting yourself from when you don't feel safe. The problem is that generally what you're actually keeping at a distance is authentic relationships that are built more deeply on trust. You have anybody that enjoys Target other than me? Anybody? Spend way too much money at Target? Keep your hands up. I feel like everybody would say yes to both of those things, right? We were in Target last night. We were looking for something, and then the new iPhone came out. Does anybody have a new iPhone, by the way? Just so I'd love to talk to you afterwards, just so I can see it. Hey, Maddie's like, yeah, I need it. I have to have. Anyway, so we were there, and they had like a display of the new iPhone, and I'm walking by it, and so you can picture this. We have like our carts, and our kids are in the cart, and we're kind of walking a little bit ahead. And I'm like, I'm just going to pause, and I'm just going to look at it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm just going to I just need to hold it. I need to touch it. You know, like I'm just excited. And so I pick it up, and apparently I picked it up too passionately, too aggressively, to something. As soon as I picked it up, alarms went off at Target. Which, if you've never watched Target workers rush to an iPhone display coming after a pastor, it's amazing. It's flipping awesome. And so I'm holding this iPhone, and immediately, you know what my first response is when the alarms start going off? It's embarrassing. I literally am holding the iPhone, alarms go off. These I don't know, high school, 20-something guys are running over. I drop it and put my hands up. That's what I did. I dropped it. I'm like, my bad. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. And then I simultaneously thought, maybe I could blame this on Henry. I don't know. I'm doing this. I'm like, what is that? Do I think the guy in electronics at Target's got a gun? I don't know, what's going on. But I'm doing this. And I'm like, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. I just, I'm not stealing the phone. I thought about it, but I'm not going to do it. And I'm just going, what is that? And here's what's so fun. You get that when it comes to that. But in your heart, you do the same thing, right? Except you don't do this. You just run. In your heart, you run away. The equivalent of the Target illustration for you is to press an eject button and disappear, you know? How do I make sure that you know that that's not, you just feel it, right? And so today what I want to do is I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that thing in you that goes, you can't get that close here, right? And here's the reason why. And then we'll jump into the text, right? We'll say this. The brokenness that you have hidden feels so much safer than the brokenness that you reveal. And this is true of everybody in the room, but come on, fellas, especially us guys, right? The brokenness that you hide so close, you feel so much safer than if it was to be revealed. The problem with that is that you're robbing yourself and other people of what you were designed to experience. Right? So we're going to talk about a guy today. The guy's named Paul. If you're unfamiliar with the Bible, Paul is a guy that wrote about half the New Testament. Had an amazing story of life change. But here's what nobody ever really talks about with Paul. Paul had extreme critics for the things that he was saying, because he was saying some things that were reshaped and they were new. Not only was that, he was a brilliant guy. Essentially, he took the local church that was at the beginning kind of focused on one area with one group of people. He goes, no, this whole gospel message, this good news is good news for everyone, so let's take it to the whole world. And so essentially, he starts franchising the thing, which is the best way you can talk about it, all over the ancient world. Churches start popping up all over the ancient world, and he leads this whole thing. And when you read Paul's writings on this side of history, and this is what I love, we're all like, oh, Paul's such a great, Paul just had it together. Paul is the man, Paul's great. He wrote half the New Testament. He's in the Bible, it's good. But what you miss is you miss all the times that Paul talks about his struggle. And you so quickly miss all the times that Paul talks about the moments that he feels weak. You talk about the moments that Paul struggles with mental health type things. So you miss the moments where it seems like Paul is trying to level and center himself on what matters most, but it always with Paul feels like a struggle. And I love that, because he doesn't hide the fact that he struggles with certain parts of not only his faith, but actually living. And so he's writing to a group of people, and he's essentially talking about what most scholars think about as a temptation or a struggle or an insecurity, something in that kind of wave of being and thinking. And he starts talking about his desire for it to be removed from his life. And here's what he says, right? This is what Paul says around that. He says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, which, in the Greek, this line of thinking really goes, in order for me not only to think more of myself, but also for other people not to think more of me, right? For people to not just see some, veneer of who I am, right? I was given can we say this together because it's fun? A thorn in my flesh, a mess. Now, this is where it gets overly dramatic, and I love it. A message of Satan to torment me, right? Now, you may take that literally, you may not, but I think it's interesting that he was so passionate about it. That's the language that he uses to describe his struggle with this insecurity, temptation, or ailment. Now, I love it. And the reason that I love this so much is he's not hiding the fact that there's something in his being that is a constant struggle in his life. And he's describing it like a thorn in his flesh, or like this kind of like, you ever had a rock in your shoe? You ever had a rock and you're walking? Anybody ever had a thorn in your shoe? You ever had this? Like it was like real sharp, and then all of a sudden like you didn't know it was there, and then it was like surprising. Yeah, and then you said a word that you're not going to say now. Like you just did that, you know? Like that's what Paul's saying, but he's like, it's constantly there. It just doesn't let up. It's never ending. It's something that hasn't been removed from my life that I want removed. And he goes on and he says this. I love what he says next. There's 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Now, the assumption here is so powerful. First assumption is that God could. Paul believed that God could take it from him, but that God was choosing not to, which is like, that's messy. Like theologically, that's a little bit messy. And not only is he just kind of praying like I'm praying over my dinner kind of prayer, it's like I am pleading that this would be removed from me. Some of you know what pleading is. So that's how you got your first date with your wife, right? Pleading. Please. Like pleading. It's further than that. Like you ever watch somebody like pleading for something that matters most? You ever watch somebody pray over someone that they love that was dying? That's a different kind of prayer. Or the way that you pray for your kid is different than that. It's pleading. So 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. And this is the response that God gives him. It says this. But he, being God, says to me, my grace is sufficient for you. Now that's not the answer that we want, right? Like I'm a fixer. Anybody else a fixer? Not a fixer of things with power tools, but just in general, I like to fix things. Anybody? Yeah? Like you've got to make it right. Like we try not to go to bed angry, which is great, except my wife can fall asleep in about 11 seconds. I can't, which means that I will wake her up at 2 a.m. and be like, hey, are you awake? And there's a look that she gives me that lets me know she's not. But I want to fix it, you know? Like how do we make it right? How do I get it in order? How do I get life just lined up and the stars aligned the way that I want them to be? The problem with that is God's saying, look, I'm not promising to remove that. And what I'm telling you is not to rely on you. I'm like, well, why? Because you've done that, and it didn't go very well. Some of you have been in like the same cycle and circle of like, I'm going to strive harder, I'm going to work harder, I'm going to be more disciplined. And then January 11th comes around and you're done with whatever you were being disciplined with, right? Like you're just not. And especially when it comes to parts of our life that are most broken. Some of you experience a deep, deep pain, and you just assumed that you could muster your way through it. And what you've done is you've fought hard through it, but you didn't remove it. It's still there. You're just like carrying it around at a deeper level. And what God is saying to Paul, what God is essentially saying to us, this far away from this statement, is like, no. My grace, my strength is sufficient for you. It's in the power of God that life changes, not in yours. And then what Paul says next, or simply what God says next to Paul, is, again, this side with Paul, it's interesting and it feels cute, you know? But like the words are so thick in what they actually mean. It says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Which, that sounds like something you put in your bathroom, right? Or your grandmother said that to you, or, whatever. But come on, fellas, especially fellas. Your power is not sufficient. And the God of the universe is saying, no. Your power is not sufficient. My power is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in the things that are broken in you, in the things that you haven't figured out, and the things that you may never figure out on your own. It's not your power. It's mine. To which, again, if we're really honest, we like this when we want to manipulate it, but on the real stuff, we don't like this. God is saying, I don't want the parts of you that you've already figured out and it's all perfect and I made it all and it's like, you know. I don't want just your strengths. I want your strengths, and I want the things that aren't quite strengths yet. Then I want the things that are not strengths. Then I want the things that are never going to be strengths. And then I want all of your failures. And then I want all of your baggage. And then I want all of the pain. I want all of the suffering. And I want all of the people, moments where you've hurt other people. And I want all the moments where other people have hurt you. And I want all of your wounds. I want all of you. And I want you to come to me with all of that and say, here, I'm not trusting just in me. I'm coming to you open-handed, saying your grace is enough for me. And then I'm trusting that your power is enough. And then what he says next is in some ways even harder, I think, to grasp. Because Paul acknowledges, for when I am weak, then I'm strong. Which is not saying, again, he's not saying, the things that I'm just not good at, I'm all of a sudden good at. That's not it. He's saying, the broken parts of me, wrapped up in the fullness and the power of God, can become an opportunity for God to do something with it and use it in an amazing way. This is the parts of your story that if we brought you all up, and you had to say it, and you absolutely had to say it, and you told that part of your story, that Paul's going, that weakness may be what God wants to use for the world. Now, maybe it's because I'm a guy, maybe it's because I'm an Enneagram 8 wing 7, maybe it's because I'm whatever personality type that they tell me I am. I just don't like that. I like to either believe that I can overcome it on my own and make it a strength on my own, or I like to put it in a box and put it aside so that you never know that it's there. And the word that we use in church for this, or other religious settings, or if you go see a counselor sometimes, the word that you hear is this word vulnerability. Like, you should be vulnerable. And I almost think this is funny because I believe this, but you never use the word vulnerable in a positive light anywhere else. Like, nobody in Game of Thrones goes, we're going to win because we're vulnerable. Like, nobody does that. Can you imagine William Wallace going, you know how we're going to win? We're going to be vulnerable, Like, that's just not, no board of directors go, I just want you to put our company in a vulnerable position. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. But when it comes to, the soul level things for you, when it comes to, your marriage and your relationship and your kids and your friendships and your influence with others in the world, come on. This is the only place that real trust is built. This is the only place that depth in relationship happens. When you don't fully and finally feel safe in the moment, but you step into it anyway. We say, here's the mess that I'm in or have been in or am heading in, and here it is. Look, let's talk about that. Here's the part of my story that I never really dealt with, and this is it. And you know why you're able to do it? Because you realize that it's not just about you. It's not about your own strength. It's not about you figuring it all out, and it's not what other people even look at you and like you, don't like you, feel like you're good or not. It's not that. It's that your weakness is a platform for the power of the God of the universe to do something with it. I put in my notes, it said this way. I said, your story will either point to the power of God or the power of you. The problem with your broken parts of your story is that it never really gets here because you don't believe in the power of you that much. You just don't. And as long as you're hiding it, you don't even really get to this unless you're faking it. You either go, it's redeemed and redemptive, or in the process of being redeemed and redemptive, or I'm hiding it. And the power that Jesus talks about, the new way of being in the world that Jesus leads us to, put it this way, like in the kingdom of God, right, in the way that Jesus talks about it, your weakness is an opportunity for his power to be displayed over and over and over and over again. And if you're in the room and you're a follower of Jesus, come on, look at me. This isn't like, oh, that's deep. This isn't like out there. In fact, you read this and you go, of course. But we're talking about that thing too. We're not just talking about like sometimes I mess things up, or every once in a while I'll smart off to my wife, or no. We're talking about like this stuff. The stuff that you have calculated and become a genius at hiding. The way that you keep people at a distance over and over again. We're talking about the stuff that other people don't know about. That even that weakness can be redeemed in a way where God uses it in a powerful and extraordinary way. As long as you come and open-handedly say, it is your grace that is sufficient. I come to you open-handed. Use it. Now here's a super simple sentence that has so much depth and meaning and power when you actually apply it. And it's this, that God's power is in fact made perfect in our weakness. And not just a little bit, and not just like in a like Hallmark way, but like the crap that is way back here. God's like, I want that too. Come on, can we just be like real blunt? Is that all right? Can we just be like super blunt? You're not going anywhere, I hope. I got a mic. We're doing it anyway. Here we go. Some of you are in the room, and you were abused as a kid. Like some of you in the room, you were sexually abused as a kid. And there's something in you, and don't miss this, that's like, that is like this category that's like way back here. And it's not like alarms start going off and people get close. Alarms start going off way out here. But it's like way back here. And it's not only that you haven't talked about it, but you like definitely haven't talked about it ever. Come on, let's just go, for a second, let's go there. The question for you, and this is the really honest question, do you believe that the God of the universe can redeem that in a way where he could even use the most broken parts of your story? Because you didn't deserve that. That wasn't your fault. But do you believe that God could take that and do something with it? Most of you know my story. I grew up in a single-parent home. And I love it when people are like, I'm so glad you talk about it. I'm so glad you talk about your mom. You're so vulnerable. And I'm like, I'm so grateful. Like, thank you for saying that. But I never wake up in the middle of the day and go, I'm so excited to talk about that. Anybody at the very first render that we ever did? I don't know if you were there. I told a story that I never told before. I did not wake up that morning going, you know what I'm excited about doing? I'm excited about talking about that. I don't. I hate it. But it matters. Why does it matter? It matters because that is beyond like the Instagram thing and the you projecting thing and what clothes you wear and what people think about you or your leadership status or your position. That's like the basic human level thing. And that's what connects us. We'll keep going. Some of you had an affair at some point in your life, and it blew things up. And when it blew things up for you, come on, you're watching online, you just go, that's a part of my story that I'll never talk about even if God redeems it. I'll never do it. The problem with that is, come on, your view of God is either too small or your view of how God views you is too small. But God can redeem those moments and leverage it for the better. Come on. Some of you right now are in some level of addiction. Maybe it's like alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be a sex thing, it could be pornography, there's all sorts of addiction. And you're in this addiction, and there's a part of you that right now as you're in it is going, this is unredeemable. This is not something that can be done. And the question for you is like, does the God of the universe have the power to take our most broken parts and make them whole? Not as if they didn't happen, but to create a new reality where that not only is not just left behind, but it's a part of your story, but it's a part of your story and weakness that is redeemed and God uses in an extraordinary way. Some of you, come on, you've had parts of your story like this where God has walked you through it and other people have walked you through it. You're on the other side of it, but you don't talk about it. And you don't talk about it because you're worried about what other people will think. The problem is there's a 20-something-year-old who desperately needs you to talk about it. There's a 30-something-year-old that needs to hear, I walked through this. And so they can look at you. Come on, look at me for a second. And look at you and go, oh, God, me too. And that me too thing, that's the relationship. That's what this is all about. That's what vulnerability brings us to, is looking at each other going, oh, me too. Wait a minute. You came out of that? Like you had this alcohol thing and that alcohol thing, and it was like, wait a minute. But you figured out how, and then somebody came alongside. I love this. Anybody West Wing fan? I'm a huge West Wing fan. I love it. There's this line, Josh Lyman tells this story. I won't go too in depth on it. We talked about this hole. Some of you heard of this? Like somebody in the hole. Somebody jumps down in the hole with him. And like, why did you jump down with me? He's like, because I know the way out. Somebody needs you to talk to them about stuff because they need to know that there is a way out and that you can walk them through that. But as long as you leave it here, as long as you are good at your sarcasm, or you're good at when the alarms go off, you never get there with people. For those of us who are followers of Jesus in the room, come on. Base level, that's irresponsible. Probably at a deeper level, that's just not the way that Jesus has called us to live in the world. So, to wrap up our time, I came across a song when I was in high school. I must have been early high school. And it's a beautiful song. It's kind of redone the one that I had heard of this whole hymn. I'm going to read you these lyrics. It comes straight out of the text that we looked at, but it says this. It says, my grace is sufficient, or your grace is sufficient for me. Your strength is made perfect when I'm weak, straight out of the text. But the second part of it says, and then all that I cling to, I lay at your feet. All of this stuff back here that I'm gripping so tightly, it's like you come to the Father and you say, I'm laying it at your feet. Why? Because your grace is sufficient for me. And I trust you. And I trust you at such a deep level that I trust you with even this. I lay at your feet. Your grace is sufficient for me. And I remember hearing this, and it was so powerful. And then I came across the other parts that I had never really looked at, and this particular version of the song didn't have it, but it says this. It says, I'm no longer striving to merit your love. In my actions and my ability to be good and grasp hold of it, I'm no longer striving to merit your love. Why? Because it's your grace that's sufficient for me. And I rest in your promise to me, and this is the part that I think is so powerful. It says, your mercy has triumphed where I should be judged. And so now by your grace, I'm free. Now, come on. If you're really honest, really, really bluntly honest, if you're not vulnerable with these parts of your story, it's because deep down you're in some level of prison that you either built for yourself or someone else built for you. But the way of Jesus is a way of being in the world where he has overcome it. He's overcome whatever it is that you have constructed for yourself to feel safe. Your safety doesn't lie in your ability to protect it. It lies in your ability to trust him with that which feels, in some ways, in a dark way, precious to you. So I came across this song in high school, and it was a few years after I started really struggling with panic attacks. Now, if you've never had a panic attack, it's one thing. We kind of throw it around, kind of a couple things. But when I was in middle school, I had these really bad ones, really bad panic attacks. And when I was having them, you couldn't convince me that I wasn't dying, right? You just couldn't. In single parent home, I struggled with it. The ambulance was at our house. I mean, for a while, honestly, a couple times a month. It was a lot for me. And then I kind of got past it. I talked to people, which were super helpful. And then, so for back half of high school, I didn't struggle with that much. Then I went to college. I was in my dorm room one night, and it started to happen again. The way that it happened for me is I could feel it coming on, and when it came on, it was like a wave of all of it, and it would last for a while. So I was alone in my dorm room. We had 2 dorms that were connected by a bathroom, which why in the world anybody wants 4 college guys to share a bathroom? I'm not sure why. But we did. Everybody's gone. And I end up on my bathroom floor, just scared, fear, anxious. And it lasted for a long time. And it was really hard. It was really messy. And I had several throughout college. And But the night that it finally, like on that bathroom floor, kind of finally subsided, the words of this song became so apparent to me. And the reason that they became apparent to me wasn't from freedom over having panic attacks. For me, it was like, I never want anybody to know how I feel right now. Like, I never want anybody to know that I'm that scared or that afraid or that weak. And I think I'd been dating Emily for a little while, and I remember the day that I like the words of the song were like, no, this is, if his grace is sufficient, this has got to be a part of not just your story, but something that like God redeems. And I remember the first time I told Emily, and it was emotional, and it was hard, and I didn't want to talk about it, and I did, and I was shaking as I told it, and which made it even worse, you know what I mean? Like, in my head, like, I'm a grown man. I mean, I was 19, but I'm a grown man, you know? Like, I remember the first time I told a friend, and it was like, what are they going to think? And I just remember thinking, though, if Jesus is who he said that he is, and if the God of the universe is, in fact, the God that we experience in the New Testament, then he either redeems broken things or he doesn't. He's either enough or he's not. And that doesn't like get you past certain things when it comes to mental health or mental illness. I am in no way saying that. In fact, we're going to do a whole series on it in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, we're going to be talking about this, I think, for about a month. But what I do believe is this, that if that's like a part or whatever that thing is for you that feels like it makes you feel weak, you, as a follower of Jesus, have to at some point get to the place where this is either something that is redeemable or it's not. That Jesus is who he said he was or he's not. And when you get there with the most broken parts of your story, you begin to realize that even those most broken parts become a platform that God will use with other people. So I thought so hard about like how we were going to end this, and in a minute we're going to tell a story, we're going to celebrate some baptisms together, but here's my challenge it's not for everybody, but it's for a lot of you. My challenge for a lot of you in this room is to go, whatever this thing is in the background, I want you to dig it up. I want you to pull it out, and I want you to go, this is what it is. And be vulnerable enough to tell somebody. And when we say vulnerable, we actually mean you're not fully safe. Somebody might look at you and be judgmental. Somebody might do that. That's a part of it. That's part of being vulnerable. But I'm gonna pull this part of it out. And then maybe for some of you, even in your relationship with God, you never even prayed about that thing. You're like, God, this is that thing. And I don't know what to do with it. But I know that I haven't overcome it on my own. I know that it's not only a part of my story. I don't even know, like, what does it even mean to fully be redeemed? But, like, here it is. This is the thing. And you're going to be open about that. For some of you who constantly feel like a failure in one particular area of your life, I think you just need to at some point say, I feel like a failure in this thing, and then take a freaking breath. Because you'll feel a release when you go, that's not just mine to carry. The God of the universe has stepped into that with me. And then the last thing that I'm going to challenge you with is this. And for those of you who have experienced redemption in these parts of your story, as easy as it is to keep it to yourself, please stop. Please stop saying, oh, they don't need me. No one really cares that much. Somebody else will say it. God wants to use you. Same way that God used Paul. Same way that God uses so many people whose most broken parts of their stories find redemption and talk about it. I was brought up in a tradition where we believed that we would lead people to Jesus with tracts by putting them on urinals, you know? As if I found a fake $100 bill on a urinal, now I'm going to come to know Jesus. We all know that's crap, right? You know what it is? Now look at me for a second. It's when people at a human basic level go, this is me. For those of you in the room who are skeptics, you've been a skeptic since you were in Vacation Bible School about church, it's time that you dig that up. Say, here's my real doubt. Here's my real struggle. I don't know that I think about Genesis the same way. Is it really an ark? Did they all make it? How many animals? Great, let's talk about that. Jesus really rose from the grave? Really? What does that mean? Let's talk about that. Because as long as it's hidden in the background, it's just some sort of like software thing that's bugging you. Come on. It's time that you get that skeptic stuff out, and this is a safe place to do it. So you can take that stuff out. So anyway, so my prayer for you today, and then we're going to hear some stories, is that you would take that step, dig those things up, and you choose to be vulnerable with somebody. And for those of you who are followers of Jesus, share your story with other people. So we're going to do a song to end. The song is called Out of Hiding. And I think it paints a perfect picture of what we're saying. Interweaved in this story of out of hiding are two people that attend our church who've experienced enormous amounts of life change, in some ways because of you, and in some ways because of the way that Jesus has been working through you and other people. And so as you hear their stories and their like vulnerability through some of the things that they're going to share, I hope that like it helps you to take a step toward whatever that looks like in your life. But let me pray for us, and then we'll celebrate these baptisms together. Father, it feels a little bit heavy when we talk about this particular kind of thing. And part of the reason it feels so heavy is because we're so good at not getting there with these types of parts of our lives. But yet you've called us to, and you've called us to live and be in the world in a different way. And so, Father, for every person in the room that's a follower of you, that has incredible, like, massive segments of their life that feel disconnected from what they're actually presenting to the world, I pray that they would find, like, this centeredness and depth, and, like, they're not on their own in this. And they would come to you fully, like, with open hands, trusting that your grace truly is sufficient for them. And as the song says, they would kind of, like, lay down the things that they were clinging to. I pray for the person in the room that feels like a failure in certain areas, and I ask that you would lead them out of that space. I pray for the person in the room who feels addiction and they're not sure how to move forward. God, I pray that they would drag that to the surface. I pray for the person who experienced abuse and they've never talked about it. They've just never talked about it. They've never really gone there. God, I ask that they would have the courage and vulnerability to step out, and not courage in and of themselves, but courage that's rooted in trusting you. I especially today pray for the person in the room who's kind of like a silent skeptic, that the depth of their faith kind of stopped at the moment that they felt like they outgrew it. God, I pray that even risking what other people might think of them if they think differently or silently disagree with certain things or are not sure what it looks like, God, I pray that they would move forward anyway. God, I pray that they would unearth the doubts and questions, and that they would bring them to light. And as they do that, the fullness of your love and your grace would meet them at that moment. And that they would learn what it looks like to have an adult faith. God, these next few moments as we kind of experience this song Out of Hiding, and as we hear the stories of Danny and Rachel, inspire us to take the same kinds of steps that they've been taking and move through these moments. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I grew up in a Christian house, went to Christian school, was very involved in all things church. I know that I accepted Jesus for the first time into my heart in a truck stop underneath the table in Indiana, and I was just so sure that I had to be done right now, and I celebrated, came out and said, I did it, and it was really, I guess, cute. But I remember feeling that I was sure. So years and years go by. I've said this before, but it's like, I feel like if you've ever tried to hold like a toddler and they're squirming and trying to get away from you, that's me in Jesus' arms, I feel like. And I'm going to try not to cry about it right now, but I've been that wriggling kind of toddler. Knowing I needed to be there and knowing I felt safe there. And I've gone back and forth like my whole life. Mallory, my really good friend, invited me to render yet again, and I said yes. And render was exactly what I needed to say and what I needed to hear that night, and I was like leaking from my face the entire time, and knew for the first time in a long time that I was in the right place, and came back, and then came back again. And then my friend Danny also and I were sitting in service, and they were talking about baptism, and I looked at her and I said, you know, I never did that. And she said, me neither. And then I went, and she goes, yeah, let's do it. So we decided that we were going to do that, which sparked all kinds of more things that started happening in my life. I can't explain them all to you. I literally don't think I could get through it. But since that decision, and since recommitting my life, everything has changed. And my friendships have grown, and my heart is changed. Opportunities are opening up. Things look different, and I'm ready for it. Before I came back to the church, before I came back to Kensington, that I know is going to be my church now, and is my church now, I felt kind of stuck. There wasn't a whole lot of growth. Even though I was achieving a lot as far as like degrees and jobs and things like that, I felt kind of numb, I guess, spiritually, a little bit emotionally too. And that has definitely changed. I've woken up. There's a song by Jenny Owens that I love and listen to all the time, and it's I'm not who I was when I took my first steps, but I'm clinging to the promise He's not through with me yet, and that's where I am.
Come out of hiding, you're safe here with me. There's no need to cover what I already see. You've got your reasons, but I hold your peace. You've been on lockdown and I hold the key. And I'll be your lighthouse when you're lost at sea. And I will illuminate everything. No need to be frightened by intimacy. Just throw off your fear and come running to me.
My family has never been very religious. I would say they were spiritual, I guess. Just be kind unto others is kind of the message that my parents taught me. My grandmother was really the one who was all about church. I would stay with grandma and we would do church at her house, and she said, it doesn't matter if you're in your bathroom, it doesn't matter if you're in your bedroom, it doesn't matter in your living room, you can pray to God no matter where you are. So she passed away when I was 15, which was incredibly hard for me. She was my favorite person on the planet. And religion in general just kind of fell to the wayside for me. I am a very logical, thought-driven, I read books, if there's a question in front of me, I have to know the answer to it, I will find out. So I'm very brain-based, if that makes sense. And I shut this out a lot, where I'm just like, shut up, I'm busy kind of type thing. And I think once I lost my grandma and didn't have that, because she was my connection with faith. And so once that was gone, it was like, I stopped listening altogether. It was like that door was kind of like my grandma's foot was the one that was stopping the door from being closed. And then when she was gone, the door closed. And, it may have only been open this much, but at least it was open a little. Well, then I married my dream guy. When we had children, we went from being very social and having a huge group of friends to very isolated. So, we did what we were supposed to do. We got married and bought a house and, jobs and stuff, and we became very isolated from our friends and got very routine. And then I quit my job where I was very social. I've always been a very social person. and I just became very sad. I was sad, I was unhappy, I was depressed, and I didn't know how to deal with that. I still don't know how to deal with that. I'm still dealing with that. My husband comes from a religious family, and it was something that he really wanted to do, was come to church. John, our friend, plays bass, and he's like, you guys should come to Kensington. And Mallory, who's been one of my best friends for a long time, is also here at Kensington. And it was just them nudging me, and then we came. And I was like, great, this is gonna be, some guy talking about a book that was written thousands of years ago that does not pertain to my life at all. And then Patrick gets on stage, and I'm like, who is this guy? And he really made the message pertinent and valid to what's happening in my life and what was going on, and I didn't know that was possible. And then I wanted to be here. It was okay, 2 or 3 times, yeah, it's fun, I like the message, but then I wanted to be here. And I think that was the change, where it was I really started to look forward to it. It made me happy. I felt better when I left. I don't have to be depressed. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I have decided that it's the time to dedicate myself to asking those hard questions and to stop running away from it. Rachel and I were here and just experiencing the service, and it was when Patrick started talking about baptism, we both just kind of looked at each other, and then he did the prayer, and we both just grabbed each other's hands. And it was at that moment when it was we decided we were going to do this together, I'm not alone, and I don't have to be alone. And it's all right, we're going to do this together. And it was learning about Jesus and what he has actually done and what his disciples have said and how they have changed the lives of the people in their time. I want to do that. I want to do that. I want to be a disciple. I want to change people's lives for the better. So I have a lot of questions, and I have a lot of tough questions, and I have a lot of issues, but I am dedicated to figuring out the answers to those questions. Jesus wants me to be.
'Cause I loved you before you knew it was love, and I saw it all. Still I chose the cross, and you were the one that I was thinking of when I rose from the grave. Now rid of the shackles, my victory is yours, and I tore the veil for you to come close. There's no reason to stand at a distance anymore. You're not far from home. 'Cause I loved you before you knew it was love, and I saw it all. Still I chose the cross, and you were the one that I was thinking of when I rose from the grave. Now rid of the shackles, my victory is yours, and I tore the veil so you could come close. There's no reason to stand at a distance anymore. You're not far from home. You're not far from home. Keep on coming. And oh, as you run, what hindered love will only become a part of the story. And oh, as you run, what hindered love will only become a part of the story. And oh, as you run, what hindered love will only become a part of the story. And oh, as you run, what hindered love will only become a part of the story. Oh,
you so much for sharing your story. Can we thank them one more time for sharing the story and being so open? And it's so great. I just wanted to say we love you guys so much, and we're so glad that you call Kensington home. And I want to say to those of you who have been a part of their story as well, thank you so much for all of the things that you've done. And baptism is a special moment for us here because it represents life change. It represents new life in Christ. It represents all the things that we talked about today. And so with that, I would ask you both this question, like, have you committed to following Jesus with your life? Would you say yes to that? And you've committed to be a part of a community that's spurring you on and moving you forward in your faith. Would you both say yes to that? Yeah. Well, it's our honor to be a part of your baptism today, even though this is the most people we've ever had in this baptism before. Pretty excited about that. So we're really honored to be able to do this. So I'm going to say this, and then we're going to baptize you today in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Pretty powerful moment when you begin to see and experience the way that God is working in other people's lives. But at the same time, we believe that God is working in your life the same way. And so what we're going to ask you again, as we kind of talked about in the message, whatever that step looks like for you, the challenge for you is to do it before you go to lunch, right? So whatever that first step is, and for some of you it's a really small first step, to be able to talk about some of these things that maybe you've never talked about. Some of you need to send out a text to somebody like, hey, we need to hang this week, and we just need to talk about something, or you need to find a person that you can talk to. For some of you, as we talked about in terms of the addiction stuff, some of you need to reach out to a counselor this week, and if you're interested in that, we would love to connect you with somebody. We have several people that we're connected with our church, but we're like, hey, some of you need to take that very first step. But our goal for you today is before you start eating the tacos at Agave, Bryce, that you would take whatever that step is before you get there, right? Before you leave this building, whatever that looks like, whether it's a text or at least say, hey, I need to reach out to somebody and have a conversation about that. And then for many of you today, it's you jumping into a group, right? So we've been talking about this throughout the series. You don't have people around you who are in community with you, and we would love to help you find that. So part of the reason we exist as a church is to help gather people into a circle, not just a row. And so today, if that's you, we have a whole kind of area in the lobby. You can go to the hub, or you can go to that area and just be like, hey, I want to get involved. I want to find a community. I want to get involved with other people so that I can kind of do some of those things that we talked about. So we'd love for you to do that as well. And then, as I said, next week, kicking off a brand new series called Why Bible. We'd love for you to come back and invite that friend who has those answers to those questions, especially. We'd love for you to join us for that. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you right back here next Sunday. See you soon.